welcome to this week's installment of Today and Tomorrow in Scottsdale with Don Henniger. I'm Don, and with me, as always, is my podcast partner, Kevin Maxwell.
Hey, last week, last week you said something that it took me a couple of days to catch on after I listened to the playback. You said Kevin who gets a kick out of Scottsdale.
I did.
And I didn't catch it until afterwards because it was a soccer metaphor.
That was my idea. You didn't. I was going to leave it alone because I wanted you to catch up to it today.
Don, you know me. I'm a slow learner sometimes. But I was listening to I was listening to the playbacks, and I'm like, that was a little metaphor I missed.
Sometimes it just takes a couple extra days, Kevin. But hey, you want to listen to this one when it's all over too, again, maybe a couple of times, because this is a special one. Today we've got two guests. In fact, you could say that they're Scottsdale's power couple, Jim and Sandy Bruner. Together, they've made a dramatic effect on all of us here in Scottsdale and beyond. I'm excited for two special reasons also. First, Sandy will be inducted into the Scottsdale History Hall of Fame next month. And Jim has just published a book, a memoir of sorts. It's a great look at not only his life as a public servant, but also a chronicle of our community's history. Welcome, Sandy. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Don. Happy to be here.
Great to see you guys. Sandy, let's start with you since you're having the big event coming up soon. And it's so well-deserved. You're a leader in so many civic and philanthropic cases, from Scottsdale's Museum of the West to the work you do with the Creative Women of Pinnacle Peak, Honor Health Honor Ball Committee, and the Franciscan Renewal Center. You've also received the Spirit of Literacy Award from the Scottsdale Public Library. I could go on, but tell me in general, what drives your volunteer spirit and your work in Scottsdale?
Well, I think it's just getting involved and living life. I never thought of it as being anything special or needing an award for any reason. When my kids were little, we moved here 50 years ago. Our kids were preschoolers, and so we got involved in school. And I got involved with the Franciscan Renewal Center and started a program there for children and Boys and Girls Club, and it just went from there. Just get involved, make friends, and try to meet a need, either in an organization or in people. It could be involving friends or associates that just need a hand or a shoulder to listen to or something. So it's just getting involved when I could.
That's the perfect spirit.
Absolutely.
It's the perfect spirit.
So you're modest there, but what is it about the Franciscan Renewal Center that kind of caught your eye? Because I got to tell you, there's a lot of parents who have preschoolers who are going to school and they don't get involved in the Franciscan Renewal Center and do great work you've done. So what was that first step into community service for you?
Well, actually, Jim and I made a married couples retreat, and we sat down with Father Mike, who was involved, in charge at that time, and having lunch with him. And I said to him, Father, you've got something for every age except kids. And at that time, I was teaching preschoolers at Scottsdale Methodist Church. And so, by golly, the next day, Monday, he calls me and he said, Sandy, let's get something going. So we did. And within a year's time, we had over 100 volunteers.
Wow.
And we had a very fine experiential program for preschoolers through about 6th grade. So that's very much enjoyable and a good memory for me.
So it's an idea you had then.
Excuse me?
So it's an idea you had. See, great thinkers think, and they approach ideas, and the next thing you know, they're doing great work.
It's the way it works. It's in your DNA sometimes, and that's why it's legitimate and authentic, which is really cool. Jim, you're in the Scottsdale History Hall of Fame too. Inducted back in 1998. Your track record of leadership and involvement is legendary. But now you can count yourself as a published book author as well. Talk about how you came to put that together.
Well, as usual, all good ideas in our family come from my wife. It was her idea to have some type of a book dealing with our grandkids. We have 3 adult grandkids. They're 22, 23. And so to prove that maybe sometime in our past there was not a horse thief, and to the best of my knowledge, I think we've established that. Maybe a car thief, no, or something like that. And so that kind of started the idea. Then I mentioned that to some people, and they thought maybe because I've been involved in a few activities in Scottsdale, maybe it'd be fun to add some other things during the 50-some years that we've been in Scottsdale. And that's how it came to be. The book is really 2 books, personal and civic. I'm not writing 2 books. 1 book was enough. And that's it's a self-published book. I'm very proud of it. As I told Sandy that it pretty much covered our history when I grew up in Iowa in the Air Force, how we got married, moved to Arizona in 1969, and all we've done since then. If I may follow up on your comment, Don, to Sandy, I think what makes Scottsdale so special is that you can get involved. Some parts of the country, even where I came from in Iowa, that wasn't always the case. It depended upon where you went to, even high school. It depended upon what degrees you had and so forth. There's no way we could have done what we've done in Scottsdale if we still stayed back in the Midwest. In Arizona, it's different. People accept you for who you are.
Yep.
They don't care if you even went to high school. If you do a good job and have done what you should be doing, you get accepted and move on to the next thing. The other hand, if you have degrees a mile long, if you're a jerk, guess what? You're still a jerk.
That's right.
And I think that's what makes Scottsdale so special. That's both Sandy and I, when we came here in 1969, 53 years ago, I said a grandparents retired here, had said aunt and uncles, and one friend from high school. That's all we knew. And for them to accept us as just simple people from the Midwest, she's a Cornhusker from Nebraska, I'm a Hawkeye from Iowa, I don't think could happen in many other communities. To me, that's one of the things that makes Scottsdale very, very special.
I think you're absolutely right about that. Back to your book for a second. It's must reading, not just to see what your personal leadership path looked like and how you were so successful along the way, but it's almost like a little history book of Scottsdale too, because you were involved in so many things since the 52 years that you've been here. You've been right in the middle of so many, you both have, in front of so many things that as you recall your efforts with that, it's almost like reading a history chronicle of Scottsdale.
Well, thank you. Well, when we came, we had absolutely no ideas we were going to do what we did. And I never had a plan for this stuff. You just do a good job, getting the Boys and Girls Club. Next thing you know, you're working your way up the chairs and you're president. Then you move on to something else. One thing just sort of led to another. I had absolutely no master plan. If you would have told us when we drove out here in 1969, knew a handful of people, that we would have been able to accomplish the things we've had with some of the honors and recognitions, so forth, I would have said, you're nuts.
Right. So, Jim, you served on the Scottsdale City Council twice. You were elected to the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. You've worked with some fantastic leaders, Herb Drinkwater, in your career, and count yourself among them too. What advice do you have for current and future elected leaders who are not going to be following in your footsteps?
That's a good question. I've tried to tell people that, well, I was in the city council. We had a great city council. We may differ on one issue with myself and another council person. It was never personal. When that issue is over, you move on to something else. Now, and not just Scottsdale City Council, we see that all across the board, that if you have one position and you're one party, I'm the other party, you must be bad or I must be bad. I hate to see that. Number two, I talk about that in the book, Don. I've given speeches at the request of Mayor Lane to the city staff. We are enjoying the fruit of the trees. The shade of the trees was planted 20, 25 years ago. Make sure that you, who are leaders now, are planting the same kind of trees, having the same vision for this community, so 20, 25 years from now, your children and grandchildren can enjoy the shade. I think that's really important. We're beneficiaries of the Indian Bend Wars that Bill Walton started, the TPC, the Cultural Council, the Preserve, whatever. Those were started back, 20 or 30 years ago. Well, what are the elected people now and the civic leaders doing so that their kids and grandkids can have those same pleasures? They thank their mom and dad or whoever for doing that.
Kevin, we talk about that a lot.
Don't we?
And it's one of the deals that we say, where is the vision? What is the next big thing for Scottsdale? And it seems like there's so many forces that are, sort of against moving forward, against change, against development. It was a loaded word around here, but we talk about the need for vision here so often.
When I hear Bill talk, I think big thinker. Right? He and his colleagues were big thinkers who accomplished big things. And it seems like now everybody's really focused on just little tiny nuance things that don't really, at the end of the day, like he said, they don't matter to your grandchildren. Right?
They don't. Where's the trees for the shade for the next generation, right? That kind of deal. Sandy, what do you think that what role do you think civic and philanthropic leaders should play in shaping out our city's future?
I'm sorry, repeat it.
What role do you think that civic leaders and philanthropic leaders can play, and what should they be doing to sort of shape and forge the road ahead for our city?
I think that it's important for our city leaders at this point, especially the council, mayor, city manager, all those people in the higher echelons of the bureaucracy in the city too, really understand and get to know things like the Museum of the West, the Children's Theater, and the artist school, things like that are so very important, and see what their needs are. And let's try to make life a little bit easier for the cultural sector, which had beginning in our community decades ago.
That's
It's
right.
part of our DNA, and we need to nurture that at this time.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Definitely part of what we do.
Jim, real quick question about your book, because I was thinking about this earlier and I didn't get a chance to ask you yet. So, self-published book, you said?
Yes.
Did you write yourself? Did you have a co-writer, or who edited it? Did you write all of us?
I wrote every word is my word. Just quickly, I made an outline on a yellow pad of different topics. I would sit down and on the computer, laptop, write about that topic. I would put as much information as I could. I didn't care about spelling or grammar or whatever. I just want to get the thoughts and ideas down. And I did that. Then Sandy was a big help in terms of helping straighten it out. We spent Mexico last year with a friend for about a week, and he helped me too. I had Diana Smith do some work in terms of cleaning up the grammar, stuff like that, but every single word is mine. Good or bad is mine.
Great.
The text is 240 pages.
Okay.
Every word is mine. We're pack rats. I save clippings and postcards and whatever forever. And my job was to try to get 16 filing cabinets, big filing cabinets, stuffed full of stuff down into manageable amounts so I could have pictures in the right spot. And our adult son, David, did that. I have no clue how he did it. I was watching on the computer, had no idea, but that kind of made the book. But the book, good or bad, is all mine.
That's all fantastic. Mine. How long has it been out?
About a month.
Okay.
It's actually, I'm self-publishing it thanks to my son on Amazon.
Okay.
As a publisher, you submit it. You don't pay anything for it. You don't pay anything until you order it. If I order a book, I pay the same as if Joe Smith ordered it.
Yeah.
The author, me, I don't get any money on it. That's not the point. The point was for the benefit of my family and people in the community that might want to know what's happened in the last 50 years.
Yeah, I'll just add in, it's a pleasure to even read and leave. I've only read parts of it so far, full of all kind of pictures from the past.
Oh, really?
And graphics and all kind of cool things. And so it's literally, it's not a coffee table book because there's lots of narrative in it too, but it's almost like a coffee table book because there's lots of visuals in it. So it's not like a novel book. It's a fun book to go through.
When did you get it?
Jim gave me a copy a couple weeks ago. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll make sure you get a chance to read it.
Right.
Although you could go into Amazon and buy it.
I was going to get my phone out right now. But
actually, it's the cover is a cartoon caricature. A guy named that Steve Benson did to me 37 years ago.
Really?
And I have it hanging in our my model training room for years. And Sandy had the idea of putting it in there.
That's funny.
He's got a picture of a horse me on a horse going backwards, which that's the whole point. The point is it's supposed to be humorous and light and not a lecture, but just how you work your way through life.
Don, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Because some of our friends have read this book, you know, and they say, a lot of them say it makes them feel as if Jim is sitting right beside them in the chair, and he's telling the stories in his own language, his own way of explaining things. It's got humor in it. It may not be the very correct English, but it's just Jim.
Yeah, I agree. Totally. It's it's folksy. It's like you're just having a kind of a good coffee table chat with Jim about his life and what's happening in Scottsdale. It just gives you a real friendly feel. I've been through I'd pick and chose some various chapters. So I haven't read it in chronological order, but I'm loving it. It's just so much fun to read.
Well, thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
So let's get serious for a second, and let's talk about issues facing Scottsdale. And Jim, we'll start with you, and then we'll come back and get some from Sandy too. What do you think the biggest issues are facing our city right now, and then how and who can we get them, and who's going to address them, and how can we do it?
I think the biggest issue is what we discussed a few minutes ago, Don, civility, getting people to be able to disagree without being disagreeable. There's always two sides to every story, and there's a little bit of truth probably in both, but it's either all or nothing. It's the ability to compromise seems to have been gone. That's at the federal level too, I guess. That's the biggest concern I have. We have some people that are no against everything. Some people want everything. There's some way to find a way in between to make this community the same as it is for all these years. Let me go back for a few minutes. I asked people, even new council people, who Bud Timms is. Don't have a clue. Bud Timms probably did more for making this community visually what it is than anybody. He was mayor back before we came here. The town was small, and he put in the design review, no billboards and stuff like that, which has made our community so special. And he had the leadership, and he just did it, took on the billboard industry. And now we have friends from out of town that come and we give them a tour of the city. The city is so clean. So there's no power lines. It's just a beautiful city.
No neon signs.
Yeah.
Right. No billboards.
That didn't happen. That took leadership. And unfortunately, people got together and made it happen. That happened when I was on the city council too, on different things. I'm not sure that happens now, not just in Scottsdale, every place. But to me, if we don't get civility, we're going to be bickering and everything, and nothing of any meaningful is going to get done.
Well, you worked with Herb Drinkwater when Herb was mayor, and everybody talks about his run as a mayor and the great things he did for the city. What were some of the leadership things he did to kind of promote the things you're talking about bringing people together? Even if you have to bring them into your office and take them down to the woodshed, if you will, just to get them talking to each other, right?
Herb had the ability to listen. I don't think people do that anymore. Listen, what do you want? What's important to you? It doesn't mean you're going to get everything, Don or Kevin, that you want, but to listen. And I think that's what people want.
That's a great point.
It makes the person think that Herb really was interested in them, or whoever is on the council now, whoever is in the head of an organization. Yeah, just listen and make them think that they're wanted.
That's a great point.
Get involved with the city.
Let me give an example. This goes back 20 years ago, I guess, when the debate whether or not rural metro should stay.
I remember. And
I got involved. I was co-chairman of the committee with Jim Lane. That's how I met Jim Lane. And fortunately, we won by a 2-1 vote, but then rural metro pulled out. I always said that if Herb Drinkwater had been there, that election never would have happened. He would have got the people in the room, we're going to lock the door, and no one's going to get out until we get this thing solved.
Right.
Without all the bitterness and the money spent on campaigns and stuff like that. That was just Herb. And Herb had a personality. Not everybody does. I understand that. But he would listen and act like, as Sandy said, you were his only friend, the only person he was interested in. And I don't think we have as much of that anymore as what we used to.
That's a good point. Kevin and I have talked before about the controversial Desert Discovery Center that went up in flames a couple of years ago. And I once wrote a column that said, I wonder if Herb had been mayor, if that actually would have been, they would have figured out a way to put their differences aside and figure out how to get that built. Made a lot of people angry, but I still think the point was valid. Herb probably would have found a way to get it done.
I couldn't agree more.
We need more of that kind of leadership these days. Sandy, from your standpoint, what do you think the biggest issues facing the city are? Is it one of the things that comes to mind to me, just to kind of maybe to prime it a little bit, is getting more people involved and following maybe in your footsteps of volunteer activities and stepping up and doing things where there's an opportunity to make a difference for our city. And sometimes I feel like we haven't encouraged enough people to do that.
Well, we do have lots of commissions and lots of people being involved, but yes, to listen to them, definitely, to make sure that once you get them on a committee, make sure that they've got something to do and keep so that they feel like they're really contributing.
Yeah,
we can't get them on a committee and then let them be on their own and just try to fly, but really get people involved and working together with other committees, and pretty soon you've got a community.
Yeah. I love your thoughts about that in Francisco Renewal Center. You had an idea, took it to the executive director, and all of a sudden stuff started happening.
In the classic American way, you come up with an idea, guess what? You're chairman of the committee.
Exactly right.
Yeah, voluntold. That's a new word I like, voluntold. That's great.
Yeah, better show up for the meetings, or else you're going to get all the assignments when you're not there, right? That's probably happened to you quite a few times, I imagine, Jim.
Absolutely.
So let's also talk a little bit about advice we might give to younger generations. And maybe this is, Sandy, this is maybe following along the lines of trying to spur their involvement a little bit more. How can we reach out and get more youth into our pipelines? When you look at people now on our boards and commissions, a lot of the volunteers, one thing that's lacking is the diversity of youth. And I just wonder, how do we reach out and get more younger people, whether they're in high school, college age, whatever it might be? How do we get them more involved in our city?
That's a hard question, but one example, we're very proud, Jim and I, when he went off the being executive chairman of the board of the museum recently, we were very honored that the board gave us a scholar in our name, the Bruner Scholar.
That's fantastic.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
So that we have, for 2 semesters now, we've had the privilege, the honor of choosing a scholar to come and learn in the museum, learning about the art, learning about how museum operates, and getting her and him, we've had a boy and a girl, involved. And know how to push forward into the future.
That's a great idea. Great
Now,
example.
where are these candidates coming from? Are they college age students or they high school students or what?
They're college age students, and they're coming from they have both been seniors in college.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And are they interested in the business of the museum or?
All aspects of the museum. All aspects of the museum.
So they're kind of like an internship then,
Exactly.
sort of? Okay.
Yes, it is.
They get paid a modest stipend, and they get college credit for it.
Wow.
In fact, the one we have now, she is a senior in museum management, whatever the course is.
Yeah.
And we have insisted that when she comes there, she comes down 2 or 3 days a week part-time, is that she work a little bit in each one of the departments. She's not there to empty the wastebasket. She's there to learn. And maybe he or she, 5 years now, will be the next museum director here or someplace else.
Right.
So instead of giving us a gift of an artwork or something, they gave us this scholarship
And
fund.
you're talking about bringing children into the,
Right.
in this case, it'd be the museum. She and I'm listening to what she's exploring with Jean Ekman Adams, who is an author of several children's books.
Right.
And so she's bringing in Jean on April 30th at 2:00 into the museum. They're going to have a reading by Jean of her book or books, and then they're going to have a treasure hunt, and they've got a whole program designed around the book. So we're very excited about that.
I think you follow up what you're asking, Don. I see that all over. I'm in a service club or Rotary club, and it's tough to get young people involved. Usually both husband and wife are working and they got kids and so forth, and maybe the employer is not as willing as in the past to let them be involved in civic stuff. So it's kind of a domino thing, and we're working hard at the Rotary Club to get younger people at the museum do the same thing, and I'm not sure there's any magic answer, but something that I think needs to be done.
Well, yeah, I think you said something pretty important right there is you have to make sure that employers are willing to let young people get involved in civic affairs.
That's right.
And if they're not, then it's going to be pretty hard to break out. Kevin, you're super involved in Scottsdale, and your employer lets you do it.
Yep.
And you're younger than I am, so I'm going to call you young.
Okay.
But you also have stepped up, and you've been involved. You ran for council. You've been on the Airport Advisory Commission. So perfect example, but you've been given the time and the latitude to be able to get that done.
I remember when I first heard about Scottsdale leadership, I was working for somebody else at the time, and they for 3 years I asked if I could do this, and they wouldn't let me do it, just because. And I kind of understand because it would have caused a problem with the other employees had I been given special treatment. So I kind of understand it a little bit, but now I got a different position, so it took me a while for my life to open up a little bit, so that Scottsdale leadership could be a part of it. And then once I did, then it's no looking back, right? Yeah. But yeah, it takes a good work-life balance in order to be involved, for sure.
On the other hand, let me make a comment. When we came here, Scottsdale was much smaller, 60,000 people, and we would go to a function. We'd know probably 90% of the people. Now it's kind of the other way around.
Right.
We only know 10%, so 90% are new people. Now, they may not be young, but the new people, which I think is good, getting new people moving into the community, gets them involved in the civic, the arts, and whatever their interest is. That's going to be the lifeblood of our community.
You're totally right. One of the toughest issues we face in Scottsdale right now is being able to provide enough housing, affordable housing for young people to come live here.
Yeah.
Have you given any thought to that about what the magic solution might be, if there is one?
If I did, I'd write another book, sir.
We're all struggling with that, and it's actually a problem statewide. I mean, affordable housing is an issue everywhere, but particularly in Scottsdale, where it's just tough to get young people to get to be able to afford to live here, and they may work here, but they can't afford to live here. And so if they're not living here, they're going to be probably less likely to get involved in civic affairs that are specific to Scottsdale.
Especially if you commute, right? You get off of work and you may want to do something to work to help contribute to the community. But if you have an hour commute in front of you, less likely.
Yeah.
Totally right. Jim, you talked about the Museum of the West. Both of you have been involved with that. How's that doing? How's the museum doing?
It's doing fine. This was an idea that 4 or 5 of us had 16, 17 years ago. We had no money. We had no art. We had no location, just had a dream. Paul Messenger, Frank Jacobson, Bob Carrots, Neil Hearn, a couple others. As Paul Messenger said, if we would have known how hard it was going to be, we probably never would have done it. Thank God we didn't know that. Kind of like Moses in the desert for 10 years. We finally got it opened here 7, 8 years ago. And within our first year, the Smithsonian Institute came to us and said, we'd like to become affiliated. We'd like the Good Housekeeping Seal of Approval you about. We've been named one of the top museums all these years. And like all nonprofits, we had some tough times during COVID. If people can't come in, they're not likely to still give them money, but we're doing fine now. And we had last summer a $12 million cash gift given to the museum. We understand it's the largest single gift by any one individual to any arts organization in Arizona.
My goodness.
So we're planning a major expansion. Hope to break ground this fall if we can get through the process of the city. Number two, I can't disclose a name, but we've had a huge, significant, as a result of this expansion, art collection, one of the largest probably in the Southwest, going to be given to us.
Really?
This individual looked at different museums around the country, Denver, the Idle George in Indianapolis, in Texas and Oklahoma, and decided they're going to give a few things of Native American to the herd, but the bulk of it is coming to our museum.
That's fantastic.
Right in downtown Scottsdale.
Oh, wow.
That's fantastic.
Very exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Very exciting stuff. So that's going to be my last hurrah. I get that done, then I'm going to get on the horse and
There you go.
Right
Well,
off.
There'll be a picture of you in the museum riding off into the sunset.
well, I tried that once, but they didn't feed the horse very well. The horse made a U-turn and came back.
And now you're going backwards like Benson's cartoon looks like, right? You're going the wrong way.
Yeah, some tells me that something will pique his interest soon, and he'll be doing something else. But
That little $12 million gift. I don't. Was there any an announcement of that?
Well, we had an announcement last summer, kind of locally. We haven't announced this other huge gift, and it's huge because the little thing in the Super Bowl took all the air out of the room.
Right.
And so now they're working with the governor to get her attention. It'll be conjunct with the city of Scottsdale, but it will be significant. It will make this museum one of the top museums of this type anywhere in the country. It's going to be right here in downtown Scottsdale.
Love it. Sandy, that's one of your prize focus areas now too. You're over at the museum quite a bit as a volunteer now, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah.
I am. We of course try to spread the word about the museum. Period.
Yeah.
You know, that in itself. And it's a real pleasure to bring them in. And then, of course, they always tell their family and friends, and anybody that visits the museum will come in through them. So it's very exciting. I'm known for hospitality and some docent work.
Yeah.
That's perfect. So the Museum of the West is one of the ways I think we can really protect our heritage, our Western heritage with the city. And I think that's something we all allude to and want to preserve. But sometimes we get sort of confused about, is our heritage standing in the way of growth and opportunities and as we evolve as a city? Probably one of the key components, particularly as it relates to the development and ongoing evolution of downtown. So do you think we can preserve our heritage and at the same time grow and become a more modern city?
I hope so. Yeah. That's intent. This museum is meant to be a storytelling, the history of how the people did what they did, how they got where we are. And follow up when Sandy said this area where we are is where the arts in Scottsdale started before the city was incorporated.
That's right.
So I tell people it's in our DNA, and I'm a big supporter. I'm conservative in many ways. Politically, I'm a big supporter in the public supporting the arts. It's always been that way in this community. Yep. And to me, that's very important. We continue to do that. If people don't like that, well, maybe this isn't Scottsdale for them, but this has been Scottsdale before it became incorporated. And I just think it's what has made this city so special, and just additional climate and weather and all that kind of stuff. And it's the support of the arts, and I can't stress that strong enough by the public sector.
Yep.
Like you said before, Sandy, it's in our DNA. You know, it's part of who we are, and it's a heritage I don't think we want to take lightly. At the same time, I wonder, we look at the developments like the Cure Corridor, which puts Scottsdale on the map in terms of a healthcare destination. And I saw a city official once quoted as saying, we're evolving from the West's most western town to a center of healthcare innovation. I don't think it's one or the other. I think you can do both.
I agree. I don't think it's inconsistent at all. Not at all.
So somehow we need to have conversations with our political leaders. They can talk to each other, and gets back to your point of civility, doesn't it? And listening.
We can have both. We can have both just by listening to each other. You bet.
Sandy, I want to ask you a question if I can, because we're going to run out of time here, and I'm afraid that the podcast will be over, and I wish I would have asked you this question, so I'm just going to jump it out and throw it right now. Of all we talked about earlier about the San Francisco Renewal Center and your involvement there. You're getting ready to go into this History Makers Hall of Fame. You have such a long list of achievements. Is there any one that you think that was the most impactful, or that was your favorite to work on, or that you really, felt strongly about as opposed to the other ones? I'm sure they're all the same, but
oh my gosh,
if you had to identify one, what would you do?
Well, we've been partners.
Yeah.
We've been married for 56 years. So I've been involved in a lot of things, even though you may not see my name on the dotted line.
Right.
I know the ups and I know the lows of all of these projects. So, and there's so many, it's hard to pick one. But one thing that a lot of people don't know about is that I was administrator of St. Maria Goretti Catholic Church
Okay.
for 7 years, and I was director of religious education there.
Which, but the reason that is important, she was the first female
Right.
to be administrator of a Catholic church in the Phoenix diocese.
No
That's
kidding.
right.
Period.
And one of the awards that we have received together is from the bishop from the diocese. It's called the Lifetime Leadership and Service to the Diocese of Phoenix.
Wow.
And we're very proud of that. Jim has served in a many roles in the finance and so forth at the church,
Yeah.
and I have in education. So that would probably
Okay.
be one of
That's a
the
good one.
highlights.
That's a great one.
That's a good one. Yeah.
If I may add to that quickly, I've been involved in a few things.
You think?
To me, because it was the hardest, the most challenging, but the most satisfying is the Museum of the West.
I read
From where it came out of nowhere. And I mean, friggin' nowhere. We started in a room not any bigger than this with a cup of coffee or maybe a drink.
Yeah.
And here we are. And I think that I'm talking about what's happened, expansion and that type of stuff, to me, it's going to be, from my standpoint, probably, I hope for her too, probably our big legacy. That's the seed that's being planted now. The tree is growing up that in 20, 25 years, this will be one of the premier museums in the country, right here in downtown Scottsdale, about 2 blocks from where we are.
That's the tree you planted for future shade. Fantastic. So you're living up what you're talking about. We're asking other people to do as well.
The Bruner scholarship you talked about will probably continue, right?
It's a significant amount of funds. We give each scholar $3,600 a semester, and we got enough for 8-9 years or so.
Okay.
So
And very proud of that.
for any seniors or juniors in college right now, we can put out the word,
Yeah.
get involved, get their application in, or let us know at the museum that they're interested, because we're looking for somebody now for fall.
Okay.
Good to know. As we wind down our on the clock here, there are so many other things, Jim, that you've done for our community, whether it's baseball, bringing professional baseball to Arizona, saving the Cactus League, dealing with the Phoenix Open, moving it to Scottsdale, so many things. So that just means people are going to have to go out and buy your book and take a look at all that. And they can buy it on Amazon, right?
And just make sure the author does not get any money, no royalties. That's not the point. It's there for anybody to learn from what's happened in Scottsdale. It's really, as you said, Don, it's kind of a history of Scottsdale. Sandy and I have been involved together for the last 52 years.
Both of these leaders are humble beyond means. The impact they've had on our life in Scottsdale, it goes beyond description.
I've been looking for this conversation for, a while, the months.
Yep.
So I'm just so glad to have them on here today and hear some of these great stories.
We'll have to get them back someday and read the book in the meantime. We'll have many more questions for you after we all get through the book and enjoy that as well. But thanks so much for being here today. You got an analytics for us today, Kevin?
Well, something I was reading that it's not particularly Scottsdale based like I normally like to do it, but I thought it was interesting. And I was thinking about you, Dom. I was reading this because I bet you, I didn't know you when you were a young man, but I'm picturing the record stores around Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, seeing you in the store probably. Did you hang out at record stores a little bit when you were younger?
Yeah, back when they had record stores.
Did you buy some vinyl?
Of course I did.
Did you own some Beatles albums and stuff like that?
I still have them today. I've got probably 500 albums sitting in the closet at home right now.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
So I was just reading something that said in 2022, the overall growth of physical and music actually grew last year, grew by $1.7 billion. And of that, 70% of the growth in was vinyl.
No kidding.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And so last year, you read that. And then last year, that was the first year in almost 30 years that vinyl has now taken back over the top spot from CD sales.
That's fantastic.
Did you buy some CDs in your day?
I did that too.
Sure you did, right?
Of course,
But yeah,
right.
I thought it was interesting that, we used to buy vinyl and then CDs came along and then all of a sudden CDs overtook them. And then we thought, we'll never go back to vinyl.
Well, don't
And
forget
for-
8-tracks in the middle of that.
Well, that's true.
You got 8-track going there first, right?
That's true. But once you saw the CDs, you never thought you'd buy vinyl again, right?
Or 8-tracks.
You're right. And here we are in 2022 for the first time ever. Vinyl has now surged back ahead of CD stuff. I thought that's interesting. And I was thinking about you, Don, your Pittsburgh days. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and I still actually have a record player.
Did you really?
So I can play vinyl. I don't do it very often now that I've got my phone and my iPod or whatever, but there's still got a record player with a needle on there and ready to roll.
Yeah. Jim, do you have any Elvis records?
We have tons of records. I'm a big fan of the big bands and the
there you go.
Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey. We have tons and tons of records.
We have shelves of them, and we have a record player right in our bedroom there where we can
that's
sit in
great.
our 2 chairs and listen. But the problem is, we really haven't had time.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
bet.
Sit and listen.
Yeah. Well, it's so convenient to put your phone on and stick your earbud in, you know.
Yeah.
Not have to dig the helm out and putting it down and putting the needle on. But I do love the vinyl concept. That's
Yeah.
really cool.
Anyway.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you for having us. We appreciate the opportunity.
Well, the thanks goes to both of you, not just for being here today, but for all that you've done for our city and you're going to continue to do for our city. And I still have a feeling you may have a few more trees you're going to get planted, or you at least have an effect on that before we get too much down the road.
I want to keep watering the trees that we have.
That's a good one too. But Sandy and Jim Bruner, thank you so much for all you've done for our city and for being here today. Amazing work for sure. And thanks to all of you for listening. We look forward to being back with you again for our next edition of Today and Tomorrow in Scottsdale.